Discomfort is not just pain for its own sake. It is the clearest signal that something in you, or around you, is demanding transformation. People often confuse the feeling of unease with failure, as if restlessness or anxiety means they are on the wrong path. But in reality, it is often the opposite. That tightening in your chest, that sense that you no longer fit inside the old patterns of your life, is the earliest indication that growth is beginning to stir. Change does not arrive politely, it disrupts. It makes the habits you once relied on feel hollow, it makes the job you tolerated unbearable, it makes the relationships you maintained on autopilot suddenly feel dishonest. This is the process of life telling you that you cannot stay where you are. Think about the alternative. If discomfort never arrived, you would never move. You would remain exactly where you've always been, repeating the same cycles, numbing yourself in routines, mistaking comfort for meaning. That's not a life, that's stasis. The discomfort you feel now, whether it's boredom, frustration, or a vague dread when you wake in the morning, isn't punishment. It's instruction. It's life saying, pay attention. Something needs to change. Most people try to escape discomfort. They distract themselves, they medicate themselves, they hide behind entertainment. But avoidance only prolongs the suffering. The ones who allow themselves to sit with the unease, to listen to it carefully, are the ones who discover the next path forward. Discomfort is not chaos, it is order trying to break through. And if you do not ignore it, if you lean into its message rather than run from it, you will find that the pain is not there to destroy you, but to reshape you into who you are meant to become. When the structures of your life begin to collapse, it feels terrifying. The job you once thought was secure suddenly becomes unbearable. A relationship that carried you for years begins to crack. The worldview that gave you certainty no longer explains your experience. At first, you think something is wrong, that everything is falling apart for no reason. But the truth is that old structures break down precisely because they can no longer sustain who you are becoming. What once held you is now too small, and the collapse is the necessary clearing of space for something larger. This is why chaos so often precedes renewal. Before new order can emerge, the old order has to disintegrate. If you pay attention, you'll notice this pattern everywhere. Forest fires devastate the land, yet they create the fertile ground where new life grows. The same is true in your own life. The loss you are grieving, the uncertainty you are drowning in, the instability that keeps you awake at night, these are not signs that life is against you. They are signs that life is rebuilding you. The mistake many people make is to cling desperately to what is already collapsing. They refuse to let go of what no longer serves them, and so they prolong the suffering. The harder you hold on to the burning structure, the more it hurts when it finally gives way. But if you recognize that destruction is often the forerunner of transformation, you can endure the chaos with a different kind of courage. You can say, yes, this is falling apart, but perhaps it needs to. And from that perspective, the collapse becomes less of an ending and more of an invitation to step into a new form of order that is waiting on the other side of the ruin. There comes a point when the voice inside you refuses to stay quiet. It says, you cannot keep living like this. That voice is not your enemy, it is the call to responsibility. When life begins to change, you will often feel the weight of what you are neglecting, the unfinished work, the people you could help, the potential you've been avoiding. Responsibility has a way of pressing itself upon you. At first, it feels like a burden, heavy and unfair. But the truth is, it is the doorway to meaning. Without responsibility, life shrinks into pettiness. With it, life expands into purpose. This is why discomfort and collapse are never the end of the story. They are signals pointing you toward responsibility. You realize that it is no longer enough to drift through your days, blaming circumstances, or waiting for someone else to fix your situation. The weight of responsibility insists that you stand up straighter, that you become accountable, that you do the hard thing, not because it is easy, but because it is necessary. And in that necessity, you find strength you never thought you had. Many people run from responsibility, thinking freedom is found in avoiding commitment. But that kind of freedom is empty, it leaves you anxious and lost. Real freedom comes when you willingly shoulder the weight that belongs to you. You choose to act even when you're afraid. You take ownership of your time, your relationships, your work, your future. And the paradox is this: the more responsibility you accept, the more meaning floods into your life. It's not about control, it's about purpose. When you stop asking what life owes you, and instead ask what you owe life, that is when the real transformation begins. At some point on the path of change, you will feel alone. The people around you may not understand why you're restless, why you're walking away from what they think is good enough, why you no longer laugh at the same jokes or find comfort in the same distractions. Isolation often arrives just before elevation, and it is not a punishment, it is preparation. When you step into a season of transformation, you will inevitably outgrow certain circles, certain conversations, even certain versions of yourself. That process is lonely, but it is also necessary. Think about it. Every significant change requires space. Seeds do not grow in the open, they are buried in darkness before they break the surface. The same is true for you. The quiet, solitary moments, the late nights where no one is cheering you on, the mornings where you feel like the only one carrying this weight, those are the hidden seasons where strength is forged. Isolation strips away the noise of the crowd and forces you to confront your own thoughts, your own fears, your own potential. And if you endure it, you emerge sharper, clearer, stronger. Many people panic when they feel misunderstood, as if rejection means they are failing. But often it means the opposite. It means you are no longer living by the expectations of others, and that is precisely what growth demands. You cannot rise and remain the same. You cannot climb and carry everyone's approval. So instead of fearing isolation, recognize it as the soil of transformation. It is the quiet before your voice gains power, the solitude before your steps gain direction. If you can sit with that loneliness without rushing back to comfort, you will discover that it was never emptiness, it was the beginning of elevation. Fear is one of the clearest signals that you are standing at the edge of transformation. We tend to treat fear as a stop sign, as proof that we should retreat, avoid, or delay. But more often, fear is not telling you to turn back, it is pointing directly at what matters most. The thing you are most afraid to face is very often the thing you must face. That difficult conversation, that new step, that dream you've been postponing because it terrifies you, fear surrounds it precisely because it carries weight. If you look closely, you'll notice that fear sharpens your awareness. It makes you pay attention. It forces you to confront the truth that comfort can hide. And here is the paradox: fear only grows when you avoid it. The more you back away, the larger it becomes, until it dominates your life. But when you walk toward it, when you lean into the trembling instead of running from it, you discover that fear is not an enemy, it is a compass. It is directing you toward the very place where you will grow, where you will shed the old version of yourself and step into something stronger. Most people believe courage is the absence of fear. That is false. Courage is moving forward in spite of fear, acting while your hands shake, speaking while your voice trembles. And it is precisely in those moments that your life begins to shift. You realize that the barrier was never the fear itself, it was your unwillingness to pass through it. So if you feel afraid right now, do not interpret it as weakness. Recognize it as guidance. Fear marks the path forward, and if you follow it, it will lead you directly into the transformation you've been searching for. We often imagine that change comes in a single dramatic moment, a breakthrough, a miracle, a sudden turn of fortune. But life rarely works that way. Transformation is built in the small, quiet acts of courage that most people overlook. Every time you resist the urge to shrink back into comfort, every time you choose honesty over avoidance, every time you take one step forward when standing still would have been easier, you are rewiring your destiny. These choices might seem insignificant at first, but together they create the architecture of a new life. Think about how habits form. A single choice repeated again and again becomes a pattern, and patterns shape identity. If you consistently choose avoidance, you become someone ruled by fear. But if you consistently choose courage, Even in small doses, you become someone capable of transformation. You don't need to have everything figured out. You don't need to leap the whole distance at once. You just need to keep moving in the direction that fear and discomfort have pointed you toward. The beauty of this process is that small acts of courage compound. Over time, they create momentum. A conversation you were afraid to have opens a door you didn't see before. A step into uncertainty brings you into contact with people and opportunities you could never have planned. The chain reaction begins with something simple, a word spoken, a boundary set, a decision honored. And gradually, those acts reshape who you are. So when life feels overwhelming, remember, you don't need to conquer the mountain in a single stride. You only need to take the next brave step. Each one rewires the path beneath your feet, until one day you look back and realize, you are no longer who you were, and your life is no longer what it once was.